want to tell a story what happened to me when I went to this cabin at Smoothstone. It's basically, I was part of that trap line at the time. It was my stepdad's trap line. And I stayed out there for 8 days by myself. I guess to most people it's not really much of a big deal, but this is my first time actually staying somewhere, especially out in the woods by myself. I had a gun with me, a small gun with me. I had some snares, I had some extra food just in case, There's a lot of wood outside the cabin, so it was kind of easy for me at the time. So anyways, the first night I went there, I heard some wolves. Must have been like around 11 o'clock at nighttime. Heard some wolves, and I wanted to listen to them some more, so I climbed the cabin, right? And I sat out there for about an hour just listening to them. It was nice, the moon was out, the sky was just nice and clear. It wasn't so cold. And then I decided to pull an idiot, I suppose you could say. Then I started howling back at them. I'm not sure how far they were. They weren't that far, maybe a few hundred yards, I'd say. They were down the road from where I was. And so I started howling, copying them when they were howling. Once I first did that, they all stopped. They went quiet, dead quiet. You couldn't even hear them for a while. And I was wondering if I confused them or something like that. So I didn't hear anything for about an hour, so I just got bored and went back inside the cabin. And then the second night, I heard them howling again, but they sounded a little closer this time. But this time they were I believe they were on the left side of me this time. Because the first time they were like up ahead of me. This time, the second night they're beside me. Well, on this side. So I decided to howl again. And then they all stopped again. They didn't howl anymore for the rest of the night. So, I just went back in the cabin and fell asleep. I didn't think much of it or nothing of it at all. And so the third night, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear any howling, nothing like that whatsoever. I was on top of the roof for a while. I was howling myself, but yeah, nothing came up, and didn't hear any howling, not a noise at all. So in my mind, I thought they might have just left, them. I thought they might have just figured out that, like, I'm a human or something around their area, and they didn't want nothing to do with me or something like that. So, that fourth night, I went outside to get some fresh air. Must have been like 10 o'clock at nighttime, 10 p.m., something like that. And I heard the howling again, except it was on this side of me, where the cabin was. And it wasn't too far from me this time. It was probably like 100 yards, I'd say. It sounded pretty close. Squirrels were even going crazy. And it was nighttime too. So I kind of knew that they were closer and closer, getting closer and closer to me. I'm not sure if because I was pissing them off or anything like that, but it was a little weird for me, because I've never known wolves to ever do that. I always thought they avoided humans, stuff like that, And so the fourth night came, or the fifth night. On the fifth night, yes. I started hearing some growling and everything outside the cabin. Growling and whining, kind of like how dogs sound when they're fighting. Kind of like that. So I decided to use my flashlight, because I had a flashlight. I was flashing out all the windows around the cabin to the outside. And I didn't see nothing at all. Never seen anything. So, and it went quiet after that, so I kind of thought I scared them away with the lights. And me being a young guy and being pretty stupid, I didn't really think much of anything back then. And so when the sixth night came, I was eating some rabbit stew by the window, and the window was like literally right in front of the table, right? And it had this candle right in the middle of it. And I noticed on the window it looked like some fog there, like there's fog building up or something. That's what you call it, fog or whatever on the window. And I was wondering why that was happening. So I got a flashlight and flashed out the window. And then there's this wolf one running away. The only thing I seen was this tail end of it, just his back legs and his tail, running towards the bushes. So that gave me the creeps because that wolf was staring at me the whole time when I was eating that rabbit stew. I must have been sitting there for about 5 minutes eating that rabbit stew, and I noticed it before, in the corner of my eye, that fog on the window. But I never thought anything of it until I really looked, because it started. To me, it kind of seemed like it was like expanding and going small, expanding and going small. So, that's what caught my interest of it. So that whole time there was a wolf actually staring at me while I was eating. That really snapped me out of it and kind of woke me up, stuff like that, So I ended up not sleeping until like 2 in the morning, I believe it was. 2 in the morning, 3. But it was pretty late anyways. So on the 7th night, as I was inside the cabin, I didn't want to go outside because of what I witnessed the previous night. I thought the wolves would be around the cabin all the time. So I was once again eating some stew. I was drinking some tea, right, by the wood stove. I put a chair there in front of the wood stove so I could just sit down and look at the flames instead of holes that are on the wood stove. So anyways, and I started hearing some scratching on the door. And the door started kind of like moving, scratching from the outside. Now that kind of like scared me the most. I've never known wolves to be that aggressive ever. I've seen wolves before that, and they're never that aggressive. They always just ran away as soon as they seen me. Even if they're in a pack, they'd run away. Even nowadays, every time I see a wolf from a distance, it runs away. So this is the first time I've ever experienced an aggressive wolves. And so, anyways, that night I was scared. I was really scared. I had to keep the gun close by me, and it wasn't really loaded, but all I had to do was just load it because it had the bullet already in there. Just had the bolt. So, anyways, I ended up staying up most of that night. And I remember on the 8th, the next morning, the 8th day, there's tracks all around the cabin, like they're so packed down. Almost like the wolves literally walked there all night, just like non-stop. It was so packed. All the tracks are so packed. Because the snow was pretty thick there. It was pretty heavy and it's fluffy at first, the first day I went there. And I barely walked around the cabin. The only time I went outside if I was need to go and check snares or check the traps, or go do a little bit of hunting, So I had my own little trails wherever I went. And I never really went around the cabin just to check if where I seen a wolf the first time through the window. That's the only time I went around the cabin. So yeah, and that was the most odd behavior I've ever seen wolves in my life. But it turns out the reason why those wolves were like that is because how hungry they were. I ended up getting one probably like a couple of weeks later around the same area, and it was skinny. It was a small female wolf, and it was really skinny, and half its body was all chewed up, like after it got caught, its wolf pack went to go eat it or something like that. So yeah, and they're all starving and stuff, but still I've never seen wolves or heard of wolves being that aggressive. Not around here anyways. I've heard stories of other places, but not around here. So yeah, that's my story about one of the most craziest experiences I've ever had, in the trap line. I've been there many times afterwards, but never alone, never too long, a few days.